welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and today's guest is a guest that I have watched online and seen on a friend's podcast and was so impressed. I was like, I gotta get her on my show, and I am so excited to be able to introduce my guest to you all. She will be at the Full Disclosure Now conference as well in next week, actually. So excited to have you on, and I would try to introduce you through your bio, but I feel like I just won't do it any justice. So I'm going to turn it over to introduce herself, the one, the only, multi-talented, amazing Gina Virginia Casella.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Michael, for having me on your show. It's really great to be here today to connect with your soul tribe. I myself am in search of soul tribe, and soul tribes, they're all interconnected. And so it brings me great honor today to connect with more community who are like-minded. And I appreciate your words because, I didn't just wake up and become the person that I am today. And despite all of the hardships in my life, if it wasn't for the child Gina and everything she's been through, I mean, everything, I simply wouldn't be the person I am today. And I really like me. I'm proud of myself. And I've never been able to always say those things, which might sound cliche, but I don't care anymore because how you think and feel matters so much. And your mind is so powerful. The mind's number one job is to protect you, even if it means creating false inhibiting beliefs and creating ailments. And the trouble is the mind doesn't understand time. So in that moment, when your mind, for example, gave you an ailment like a rash, because maybe, for example, there was perverted people around you and that rash, scared them away, even though you don't need that rash anymore, the mind doesn't understand time. And so your programming, if you will, it's a blueprint and it's a stamp. And someone like myself, a transformational healer and shaman, I can help you with what's called mind reprogramming. And so just to rewind for a moment, I'm one of those people, I get a bit ahead of myself. So Michael and I, we were chatting away and I was telling him, like I was sharing my presentation for the Full Disclosure Now conference was quite challenging for me to shorten because I only have an hour and 15 minutes. I've self-published 8 books. I've got all kinds of things to share. But something that I'm really striving for is listening because I'm in a state of receiving. My life has been quite masculine as far as giving, providing. There's a lot of past lives that have to go with that. But despite my training, it turns out that the real power that I offer is people telling me things. And I've been one of those people my whole life. Folks have just been telling me things, all kinds of things from high strangeness, vampires, angels, to just really personal things about relationships. And I've come to understand there's a validation in sharing your story and having somebody believe you. So it's easy to talk about some topics, but when we start talking about Bigfoot and other such things in esoteric literature, all we can do is believe the person that they believe what happened to them, right? So, so I have a lot of life skills training and experience. I had a spiritual experience my whole life, basically. I thought that was normal. When I was in grade 2, 2 angels came out of my wall. It was not a dream. It really scared me. It unsettled me. My world did not make sense anymore. And I didn't make sense anymore. My vision blurred, my hearing flip-flopped. That's because it was trauma. Well, I didn't understand that. And I already, like when I was telling my little stories, it was cute, But when I was getting older, it wasn't cute anymore. And then this angel experience, I basically got perceived as a liar, somebody who wanted attention. So life goes on, and more than 30 years later, I become a school teacher, very passionate. Those of you who know me, social emotional learning is a priority in public education. I was that teacher that was very involved, heavily involved in union business. 3 years in a row, I went to the British Columbia Teachers Federation. I went to the annual general meeting, took the microphone in front of 1,000 colleagues advocating social emotional learning as a priority in public education, because how you think and feel matters that much that the research shows that students can perform better when their social emotional needs are met. The academics don't even worry about that. And so I'm really passionate about feelings. And then I became a hypnotherapist, and now I'm a shaman with the Four Winds. A handful of years ago, 2021, I was feeling pressure and I ended up having a severe panic attack, which led me to a spiritual crisis. I've come to learn spiritual crisis, that's basically when your whole matrix just it unplugs. And that happened to me. And I couldn't believe it. And so my teaching career, I had a phenomenal career. It was really hard to let go of that career, but it's made space for this new matrix now. And I'm realizing things that I didn't realize. And when I think about my childhood, I really would have benefited if someone like me was around. I mean, there was lots of people like me around, like you around, like folks listening to this show right now, riding through the unknown. And even my own soul tribe, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective, like to us, it all makes sense. But for myself personally, nobody was there when I was a kid, and it was confusing because it's okay to talk about Santa Claus. It's okay to talk about Christmas angels. It's okay to talk about the tooth fairy. I was raised Roman Catholic, but this box is very inhibiting. And that's part of the programming, because we're born into programming, whether we want to be or not. We can have a conversation about the life between lives. I'm really passionate about it. I'm also really passionate that despite what goes on in the life between lives, this might trigger some of you, but it is my pleasure to assert that the Akashic records are not a permanent record and that you can take charge of your life. You are the author editor of your story, and nobody can write your story like you can. And it is your birthright to write and rewrite your story. And you don't have to worry about ripple effects and whatnot, because I do believe the greater universe will take care of that as part of our greater oneness, because we are the God that we've been waiting for. When we're one, we're whole and holy, we're God. When we break up, we're a collective. So I have my role in my story, and respectfully, so does everybody else. And we do what's called co-dreaming. So this is a dream, and we're dreaming it together. Now, that's a hot topic for me because it's like, why is all this stuff going on in the world, hardships and whatnot? But you know what? It's about being in right relationship. And for what it's worth, your past never defines you because the past does not exist. Everything exists in the now. I do believe in the ancient future because everything is in the now. And I do believe that alchemy is ongoing. So it doesn't make any sense to me that your Akashic record would be a permanent record, and anything that you've done, no matter how wicked, is set in stone. I do believe in second chances. And on that note, I do believe that there's confusion about things like mental illness and evil spirits. I am never excusing anyone's behavior, but there's darkness, mental illness, confusion out there. And we need to practice discernment and build our own tools and awareness, because something I've really appreciated about becoming a shaman is that we are our number one tool. And the biology of belief is very real. The epigenetics, the world around you, you have absolutely no control over that. But you can control yourself. You can self-regulate. And you can bridge your dream world, which is what I'm doing. And that's where this whole story of the gemstones and the Gnome King all come together. But maybe I'll stop talking for a moment and let you jump in, Michael, because with me, it's easy to slip into timelessness. And I do believe that even if I had an intention, that sometimes it weaves, and I'm okay weaving around. So let me know. I'll follow your lead.
No, you're doing just fine. And one thing I always like to point out and reiterate to people is, like you pointed out, growing up, it wasn't the same world as it is now. Like, if I was to say to someone, "Oh, yeah, I have past life memory," they would look at me like, "You have a what? You sure you're okay? You sure you're not sick or needing help with something?" Where today, if you say the word past life, they're like, "Ooh, what was it? Who were you? Tell me about it." So yeah, growing up was a lot different. And I feel like, that's where I like the term way shower comes in, is we've gone through the hardship of going, we stood against walls that we didn't create, that other people created because they didn't believe. And so we had to believe in ourselves because nobody else would. And so that's, where we're at today, is to the new generation going, yeah, you guys are free to go because we have that belief built in, because we fought for our belief, and we're able to gift you the knowledge of, you're going to be believed. You don't have to go through the journey like we did. And I'm not saying everybody's always going to believe everybody, but it's a lot easier now than it was back in the day.
Absolutely. And I love how you're honoring that we get to believe. It's a choice, because it's not like that everywhere. And even in countries like Canada, I'm Canadian, we're a free country. We've got our freedom of speech, our rights, roles, responsibilities, and yet we still have um, folks who are very controlling, very protective. The moon, for example, is arguably a spaceship. We could have a conversation about it. You know, Pluto, for example, was declassified as planet. So, myself as a public school teacher, when I was having my career and getting into this kind of stuff, I was like, how do I? So, I would tell my students and just kind of leave it at that. But I've been in circles behind the scenes, and as soon as I mention stuff like that, don't want to hear it. Why? Because I'm talking to a scientist who does not have the courage to step into today's understanding. So I really appreciate folks like Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden, who are taking the conscious evolution as it is coming in. And if we need to make change or recategorize something, that's part of alchemy. And that's why the Akashic record is not a permanent record. Can you imagine if it was? I don't think so. I
Yeah,
don't,
that,
because I
that
get passionate about it, sorry, because I used to be so inhibited. My life was going like, I like to weave my wisdom in the dark, and little did I know I was weaving my own handbasket to hell, okay? And I realized hell is a very good place. It's very cleansing. It's just like any correctional institution, it is very misunderstood, needs to be remanaged, just like our correctional institutions need to be. And working with these metaphors, the flame, the cleansing, the fires of hell, cleansing fires of hell, because you know what? I've come to understand it's called hell, not because that's where the bad people go, because the good people and the bad people are the same people, right? I'm you, you're me. We have oneness. That might have triggered some folks out there, but that's where I'm at. And I've come to appreciate that hell is called hell because that's the emotional turmoil that we go through, whether we're doing it to ourselves through our own false inhibiting beliefs, or because somebody is imposing on our co-dream. There's much to say about it, but you can reprogram your mind. And I was just getting passionate again. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. And what I find interesting is because we take a lot of our terms from other religions and faiths and everything through time, that when you were talking about hell, I was like going in my head and going, the Norse have an interesting way of looking at hell, and it's actually called Helheim, and it's the realm of the dead ruled by the goddess Hel. And it's not for people who, did wrong or did right. It was just a place for those who didn't die in battle and were given a chance to try again, and almost like a learning a lesson and going over and doing, an ability to be reborn or reincarnated and, do again. But it's interesting because when you look at Norse, they're a warrior society. So not dying in battle was an insult to them, but it's not the insult of like, oh, you are a coward. No, it was just you unfortunately didn't get to go to battle. So they were still honoring you and allowing you the opportunity. So yeah, it's interesting to me how people get a hold of stories and rewrite it. And another one of those is Armageddon, and it comes from the Norse, who the true story of it is Thor fights the serpent wins, Ragnarok happens. But what they don't tell you is two people, a male and a female, go into a tree, and once the serpent is finally just done doing what it's doing and defeated, they come back out and repopulate. So there is no end time. And so that's the part I think everybody likes to leave off because they want it to be the end so they can sell the fear. And if you go, oh, well, if you go through this darkness and there's light and rebirth at the end, that's not fear. You can't sell that.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that about Hel, that story, or the Norse, if they didn't die in battle. That's what that was. So thank you for sharing that. It's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, and I love how we grew up, and I'm sure you experienced this too, of like dragons were like, oh, these are the things that were going to come and kill you and eat you, and you should be afraid of. And then it was like, was it the 90s? Like movies like Dragonheart started coming out where we're like, dragons aren't so bad. And there was like a shift in what's a dragon.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of things you said are interesting because where to start, like categories and understanding, like, Dante's Inferno, that was a great book because he was challenging, because the way it's described biblically, you break the law, you go to hell, right? But
Right.
Dante's Inferno is about having different levels of hell, to meet, so where is that individualized, personalized learning, right? Like the Norse folk who didn't die in battle. It seems to me like there was still some kind of personalized in between world of this, in between place that they could go to and then come back. Um, Something too is the concept of a warrior and what that really means. Warriors always are standing up for things that are bigger outside themselves. And when you were talking about having an end, that's going back to that box because there is no end. And the logical mind demands a story structure. That's why we're a story species. We demand a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't have to be a good beginning, middle, end, but we demand it. If somebody, if the story doesn't have an end, we're left hanging. Uh-oh, that might mean we're going to be creative and use our critical thinking skills. No, 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 no. Somebody who's controlling doesn't want you to do that. So they'll tell you, this is the beginning, how you think and feel. This is the middle, how you think and feel. This is the end, how you think and feel. The story does not go on. You stay in your fear-based scarcity mindset and wait for the next story to come, like medication, for example, where it's a systemic approach. You just take it, it's like putting on a Band-Aid. You don't actually solve the problem, for example. So being a story species, it's actually directly linked to our biological language and ways of knowing. And so when it comes to emotions, that's why emotional abuse is arguably the most harmful abuse, because it ripples you emotionally, and that is your blueprinting and your ailments and um, your subconscious programming. Because in the moment, like in the heat of the moment, even if you're conscious of it or not, because like me and you right now, we're only talking to the 5% of each other. We have a 95% of us that's in charge. We only have access to that if we're sleeping, like in REM state, rapid eye movement, or unless you see someone like myself who can get you in that state and actually reprogram your mind. So it's really real. And you didn't use the word authenticity, but you were speaking about authenticity, like real stories, real, esoteric um, information. And that's very powerful to me, to be open, authentic, to be thankful, to honor those holy instances, even if we don't understand them. Because I do believe we were severely abused as a species. Do I have all the information? No. Do I have it all figured out? No. But I do know that through dreams and my own personal experiences, information's coming out, and we do share a lot of themes in our lives. And that was the point I wanted to make too, was like the details in our story, they actually don't matter, because it's those details that drive us to the greater themes, and it's those greater themes that matter. But here's now where I'm going to be hypocritical, and duality, the double-edged sword, comes into play, because now I'm going to tell you the details absolutely matter, because without the details, there's no way you would get to those themes. And when it comes to your programming, those details are your Akashic record. So you need to get into those details, you know? And when you get like reprogrammed, let's say you have a fear of flying, right? It doesn't always have to be something super, super, but like, let's say you have a fear of flying because once upon a time you heard a loud noise and you associated that with like an airplane crash, and you have no memory of that. Well, if I regressed you, I would take you back to that blueprint, but we don't stay there in memory lane. I extract the information I need and we move on. And so I really take a lot of joy in that, because I myself didn't realize how inhibited I was. And because I was having so much hardship in my life, I actually started to think I was evil. I really started to think, oh my God, I must have been quite the tyrant in my past life to have to now learn lessons in this life. That's an injustice to the biological one known as Gina, because she's immortal, right? And like when you kicked off this show, you were talking about lines and barriers and understandings in different cultures, religions. All of those lines are illusion. Even the lines on the map, they're illusion. We put them there. And those are just more lines that represent the limits that we put on ourselves. So it always fascinates me. And even this idea of a dragon, like what is a dragon? You picture a big reptilian with scary teeth, and maybe there's wings, maybe there's not wings. Like for me, the dragon is that primordial form that took place a long time ago. And it turns out that in my past lives, I was quite the tyrant. I laugh because it's awkward, not because it's funny. But after some investigating, um, it led me quite down the rabbit hole, because I was challenging what does it even mean to be evil. And I've seen it, like, even with my students, because I'm really passionate about teaching kindergarten. So I've seen students in their kindergarten years. And then, you know what? I see them later on in grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, and they're not the same. Why? Because stuff is going on in their life. And then, you know what? Then now they're in their 20s and some of them are stealing cars and stuff like that. I know that's not who they are, right? If they would have had a better environment, if they would have been in better relationship, all children are in survival mode. You are the person you are at age 5. You know that expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Well, it turns out you can, but they don't learn like the puppies, right? So at age 6, we're old dogs. But you can reprogram your mind. You have to awaken to it. And that's what we call conscious evolution. And when we awaken to those truths, geez, do they ever hurt and rip us apart? And as much as it hurts to face the truth, it's the best thing for us because we can make change. And the mind's number one job is to protect you. So your mind is going to go, what? Face the truth? No, 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 no. Let's keep you in this lie. Let's keep you fear-based because what's familiar, that's what the mind perceives as safe. So even if you're in an abusive relationship, you know the right thing to do is you won't because it's familiar. And these rules of the mind can be really frustrating. They even cancel each other out, which is even more frustrating. Once you get to know them, they're really helpful. And again, I always have so much to say, so maybe I'll let you chime in, Michael. And thank you for listening.
Oh no, I'm
And you
learning
always
a
throw in
lot,
some
and
comments popping up.
yeah, I'm learning a lot. And one of the things that I find interesting too is as we're talking about like growth and everything, is we assume conscious awakening is, oh, we're different in that where we are is different, how we are is different. And what we don't realize is it's happening every day because we're put into scenarios kind of like the lessons you're talking about. And the way I view them is when you first have that instance, it's like you go into panic. You're like, your mind is like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. But then you learn from it, you grow from it, and how you see that is the next time you're in a scenario similar or exactly the same, your reaction is different. And that's where I have the aha moment of I am growing because I'm not reacting the same way. I'm not going into the same mental space. I'm now looking at it with new look and going, why is this repeating now? And what's different about this? And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I get that the very second it happens. It may take a couple of minutes or an hour, but it comes there. And so that's where I think the growth and the ascension that we're looking at is every situation we're put in, are we reacting the same or are we different? And if we're the same, that's, I think, the universe sitting there saying, hey, look, we're giving you this opportunity to learn. You're not learning. We're giving it to you again. Can you please learn from this? We don't want to keep giving it to you, but we have to until you realize what you're needing to realize that you set up to learn. We didn't set this up, you did. And when I say you did, I'm meaning the I in the situation. And so that's where I think a lot of people get turned around is they keep looking for an exterior force to say, yes, this is how you're going to change. This is how you're going to grow. And that source is actually within.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We are not our genetics. We are like you said, we're our mind, body, spirit source within, and we respond and react to the world around us. The world around us means your epigenetic, all the things you can't control. And then we take in information and process it. And when it comes to doing personal work and healing and learning lessons, that's where I can get frustrated with my own journey, because like I was saying, like if the Gina before this lifetime had things that she didn't wrap up, like that's on that spirit, right? At least for me, because as a biological one known as Gina, I'm doing my own thing. I'm a Mother Earth, a Pachamama in my own right. I'm a piece of land, and I roam around here. And someday I'll die. I'm mortal, so I'm like a car that the spirit is driving, if you will. And I have the um, autonomy to choose. And we can have conversations about how when you follow your path, life flows, and when you don't follow your path, life doesn't flow. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how I believe in second chances. And so if a spirit wants to come back here and take my form and do work, great. But I do believe I've come, at least through my own journey, that spirits are also alchemizing. And so if they keep taking on our forms to do work and they're not actually doing the work or making things worse, then I do believe they will be denied a form in the future. And I do believe, I don't understand it all. I do believe that there's things like, transmigration of souls, soul consciousness transfer. Um, Things are not adding up. And that's why we need to have these exact conversations, because like when I was a kid, I was told, oh, you die, you go to heaven, everything is fluffy, right? But now it's like, I don't even know what that is anymore. Um, I think this is heaven on earth, this experience. Simultaneously, it's hell. Um, I always have lots to say, but I'm telling you, like those two angels that came out of my wall, it was only a handful of years ago that I realized I don't think those actually were angels. Those are probably extraterrestrials or some kind of Homo sapiens sapien 3D biological yielding technology. And it challenged in my mind, what is a ghost, a spirit, a formless folk versus technology? And so I'm deciphering it too. And that's why it's important for me to share my story and connect with you and your soul tribe, connecting with my soul tribe, because I too am in search of answers. And I mean, it's nice to have these conversations, but I do take them seriously, maybe too seriously, because I understand the power of mind reprogramming. And what I do is not a party trick. It's real. And I'll stand by my experiences, right? So why wouldn't I stand beside somebody else's?
Right. And one of the things that I view as like a host listening to like you sharing your story and other guests sharing their stories is I am standing in the place of listening and going, I can't judge anything that's being said at me. I can only respond with how it resonates to me or thoughts that I may get about it, but I can't sit there and say, no, that's not at all what happened, or no, you didn't experience that because I wasn't there. And that's the one thing we forget is unless we're there and witnessing firsthand what's happening, we have to take everything at face value. Now, does that mean someone is always going to be honest in telling you their story? No, they're always going to be little changes, little nuances. So that's where you have to, as the listener, take what resonates with you, what you need to learn from that experience, and reflect it back. And that's where I think the mirror effect and other concepts comes in is we think we're looking at ourselves, but in fact, I think what we're actually now, I don't know where this is coming from, but we're looking at what harmonic or frequency that we're missing is showing up and how we can attain it to add to ours and to make, like you're saying, our harmonic frequency whole, because we've been taught to separate it. We've been taught, you know, countries are countries, religions are religions. You don't mix. Cultures are cultures. And we are constantly being divided out and going, here's the smart people, here's the athletic people, here's the nerdy people. And we forgot we're people. You can be all or you can be none, but that's where I'm finding it interesting is, we keep talking about the oneness and being one with everything, but I can't help but feeling like our understanding of what that means is limiting, and therefore I don't know that we can truly ever say we're one in this form being here on earth, because we're looking at everything through the earthly eyes, the earthly mind, the earthly concepts, and we're not trained, so to speak, for the galactic. Now, there are some that are among us who can tap into the galactic, and they do think differently and see everything differently, and that people can't understand, and so they attack it. And that's where I think there's a lot of people that say, like, we can't go into space, and I'm like, I get it. We are not a society that could go into space and be like, hey, how's it going? We're the society of, oh my gosh, you did this, we're going to attack you. And that's what we need to get away from, and not be a reactive system, but a one that stands back and says, wait a second, why did you do that? What did we do that you misunderstood? And what did you do that we misunderstood? So we can be like, oh, hey, it was a misunderstanding. We're all good. Everything's good. And I think that's when we'll be able to truly transcend this planet and go and become the galactic.
I think you're going to like my presentation, The Gnome King at the Full Disclosure Now conference, because I'm going to read a few pages from The Gnome King. And so, spoiler alert, but hey, my book is self-published. If somebody else read it, the information's out there. But this is basically what the Gnome King talks about. He represents lots of things, and he's let go of categories too. And, when I first was communicating with him, the Gnome King and the Grim Reaper, who is formerly known as the Cosmic Custodian, we perceive him as the Grim Reaper. But they challenge my thinking, right? Because you nailed it. Can you imagine the new neighbors moving in, and they invite you over for dinner, and they're barbecuing your dog? Like that would not be cool, right?
No.
So how would you feel if really genuinely the neighbors, that dog is no different, or like, what about if they barbecued the lady down the street because she has a critical illness, and respectfully, that's how wolf packs and whatnot hunt. They take down the sick, right, and the weak. So these conversations are hypersensitive ones, because we struggle with things like racism and the way people identify sexually, LGBTQ2 plus spirited. That in itself has like acronyms that are being created and categories recategorizing. It might seem annoying, but I get it. Folks are figuring it out. That's part of alchemy. But something that I always thought in the back of my mind as a teacher at all those union meetings, it's like, if we're struggling to handle this, how are we supposed to handle the ET agenda, right? Like, you don't have, like, when we talk about full disclosure, you can talk about it by talking about other things, because going back to stories and story medicine, how we're a story species, sometimes the details vary. Like, you have different stories that have nothing to do with each other, but they all share the same theme: being an outcast, being misunderstood, um, bullies, even going into outer space. I think it's really cool that mankind, like, yay, we've made it into outer space. I also feel very vulnerable because outer space is like this big forest, and there's not a like seemingly there's tons of stars in the sky, but it's like, what are we hiding from if we're just out there cruising around? Like, we're totally exposing ourselves. Like, um, I think all kinds of things, and I'm open. And who knows? Maybe in 40 years from now, I'll tell you, you know what? Remember, I said those angels that came out of my wall were ETs. Well, now I'm saying that they're angels again, or maybe I'll tell you now they're vampires, or whatever I tell you. Like, I'm open to alchemizing our language and not getting hung up on it. And again, duality is at hand, because I understand we require a common language, but we should never get hung up on it. You know, um, I'm really enjoying myself
Yeah.
today. It's been a little while since I've um, just kind of reiterated those things. So thank you for that. And hi, Jason H. I saw you, and I saw a few others, but it flashed a bit too fast. I didn't. I
Oh,
couldn't
there's KIK, and
IKIK.
let's see, there's a Zeke 9.
Hi. I thought I saw Isaac's name on there earlier.
Uh,
It's good to
yeah,
see you
and
on here.
let's see. I thought I saw some other ones, but apparently,
I don't know if I saw Selena, and maybe I just wanted to see Selena, but it looked like a Selena, or maybe there was an S. Seeing what I want to see.
oh, KIK says
Anybody
Kyle
have any?
Fulmer.
Oh, Kyle! Kyle's part of the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective, as is Michael. And so the first Wednesday of each month, I hop on my Facebook and I do live gemstone readings. And a few months ago, Kyle got one. He received one, and he said he'd let us know. He would give an update. And then this morning, I woke up, and there he is on his drum set, because he's interested in sound healing and vibration. And it just really made my heart happy. So, and I posted this link in that Facebook group as well. So, see, the Soul Tribe, we're all coming together, we're mingling, and there's never any push energy. It's only pull energy here.
All right, and I actually got one. Was it a couple weeks ago? I stumbled on the live and
Yeah,
got it.
you were last month. I remember.
But it's amazing to watch and just to partake in, because it's like the information's coming, and it's like when I look at the card, like tarot cards, I can see from the image. I'm like, okay, I can see where this is coming from. But when you're looking at like gemstones and everything, I'm like, yeah, I'm loving how this is coming through, but my mind is like, how are you seeing that in that stone? And then it's like my mind also goes and says, well, I pick up stones that are different shapes. Like I picked up one and I bought because I was like, when I got home, I was like, this is a key to something. And it's like, I see it for more than what it is. And so I think that's why it's like fun for me to watch and see, how you're using them, because everybody can use everything around us differently. And that's the beauty of it, is if we all were doing the same thing, there would be no growth and no joy in anything, because it'd be like mundane. Like, yeah, okay, today I'm getting a message of this from this again. And so, and you mentioned the moon earlier, maybe being a space station. And that's one of my favorite, like, conspiracy theory type things is when you look at it, it's an object that we supposedly fly to, and we can't we can't land and talk to a base and get help or anything. So we're at the mercy of the moon, and there's always the dark side that's never in front of us. So it's an object that doesn't move, so to speak. And you look at the Earth, and we have all these satellites around, so we can what? Communicate with each other. But from the 60s to today, there are no satellites around the moon to communicate with our astronauts in the shuttle. And that's where my mind is like, why? If we know we can fix that with a simple object in space, why haven't we done it?
Do you think that they put us here, and they're watching us? Is that what you're thinking? Or do you think they're a spaceship craft that maybe unintentionally got tidal locked into us? I also wonder, what do you think about the time before the moon? That's always interesting too. And also, what do you think about the moon being, like you were describing, like a landing place for other spaceships and whatnot in outer space, and then we don't see that because it's the dark side of the moon, which is just the other side of the moon that we can't see, right? I'd love to know your thoughts.
Well, I view the moon as it is it like a space station sort of thing, because remember we shot a rocket at the moon, and when it hit, the impact made a metallic dinging like a bell.
Yes.
So a celestial object doesn't ding like a bell when it hit. So to me, that says it's definitely artificial. And I think what it is our ET space, Starseed, all those different star races. I think they operate there and they're watching us, and they're watching to see our growth and going, yeah, and they're trying to help us, because look at, the fact we have nuclear and atomic weaponry that we could literally take this planet to its core, but yet we don't. Something stops us from doing that. And they've even our reports of when they're running tests, the systems go down and they can't explain it and then come back. And I think it's their way of saying, yes, we know you have this. Yes, we know you could use it for good, but we're not going to let you use it for any other purpose. So just remember, we're watching. And so the moon, to me, I feel like there's bases on there, and the fact that we sit there and try to tell everybody we're the only source of life in our galaxy, that's why we can't communicate with the moon, because that would in turn rip that asunder and people would start to question everything. And so they're keeping their limiting theory, and so yeah, the moon becomes this object that's there and affects us. And that to me is interesting too, how it affects our tidal waves and everything, because you look at the other planets that have moons and theirs never changes. Like Jupiter has this giant storm always in the center of the planet. It has moons, but yet the storm stays put. You look at our moon, and depending on where it's at, we get flooding, we get water disappearing. It's like everything's moving, but yet we're the only planet I think that I'm consciously aware of that has that impact. So, yeah, I don't think the moon is this celestial object we think of it as. It's not a piece of the earth that broke off like they tell us.
That was the story I was initially told too. Like, the universe was being created and a chunk of Earth came off and that became our moon. I alienate UK. Something you said too was the bell. You know, you didn't say it, maybe you were just thinking it, but the bell dings because it's hollow inside, right? So it would imply that the moon is hollow if it's dinging. Well, what is it, like a bubble gum? Like what's in the middle? And arguably, um, that's where the folks live and have their city, if you will. And I have a lot of interesting dreams about all kinds of past lives. One of them, I was this goldfish dancing online on sand, and so sea and sky used to be one, and then it started separating. There's so much to say about the goldfish dancing on land, and the goldfish dancing on land is very high energy, full of happiness. Nothing can dampen the spirits, right? And there's no such thing as the moon. And I didn't even make that connection until I was listening to David Adair one time, and he spoke. He said there's indigenous literature out there where they speak about the time before the moon. And I was like, oh my God, this is one of those holy instances where something I don't know, because I didn't know about David Adair. I never talked to him about my dreams. And he's a scientist, like an authority. He's not just some guy reading a book. And he's making these kind of statements. And so when I was a goldfish dancing on land, I just loved the sun. And I thought it was so cool how the sun moved. But I understood that it's the earth that's moving. And I was fascinated by shadows. Every day was the best day of my life. Every moment was the best moment of my life. It was a real thrill being the goldfish dancing on land. And I was attracting attention from other star nations because I started plotting following the sun. I would put rocks and it created a clock, which attracted people. And they wanted to know about things like time because it had to do with biology. You see, time is an illusion. Tell that to the biological one known as Michael, who needs water, right? Tell that to the biological one known as Gina, who requires food, or we will perish, right? So the goldfish dancing on land exists in a state of timelessness and also now becoming more and more biological because of the situation. And essentially, I was persecuted. That was one of the so folks came um, and I was able to stay out of the water for a long time, but it was getting to that point where sea and sky were separating. So all the animal insect folk had to make a choice, like, are you a land animal or and then you've got turtles like in between folk, right, who are both. um, but I was so happy and likable. Like if anything represented happiness, it was the goldfish dancing on land and just the emotional joy um, that I would bring people or animals, because there was no people, delighting in life. And I knew that there was like consciousness aware of me, and I'd make them laugh. But anyways, folks started coming from the sky, and they wanted to know about biology and these kind of secrets. And there's also simultaneous stories where other folks crash land here, and like it's too bright and sunny for them, so they live underground. And I intuitively knew that I couldn't reveal that they were there. So I had to protect them and play dumb. But I guess like the people who were watching, they knew I was lying. And so I just basically laughed, dying. They threw me on the land. And in the past, if I was starting to get dehydrated, I just had to go stand beside a tree, or an animal would just breathe by me and the animal's breath would like keep me hydrated. but because of the situation, that nobody could help me out. And so I died, and it's really like hilarious and very hysterical at the same time, because um, as I'm dying, they're demanding this information about time, but they also feel very conflicted because like they know it's wrong what they're doing, and I can start feeling myself dehydrate, and I actually take like I can smell myself like I smell like fish jerky, right? And so I tell them that, and I'm like, something smells good. Like and this just freaks them out, right? Like it's disturbing for them to watch me because I really embrace this. I'm like, okay, you're gonna dehydrate me. I'm gonna die laughing. I'm gonna die with joy because that's what every single moment of my life represented. And then I actually the edges, like my fins and that curling because I'm dehydrating, and I actually start taking bites out of myself, and I'm like, I'm tasty, and I'm even like, would you like some? And of course this is very disturbing, right? And then at some point I die, and then so now I'm like dead, but nature is like sovereignty is not okay with this. So in my dream life, that's why we have fall, because the color orange, um, the goldfish dancing on land, koi fish, those kind of fall colors, red, orange, yellow, brown. Those are my colors, um, and so nature was like, you know what? We're not providing for this planet anymore. Everybody can perish. But then Mother Nature, being Mother Nature, was like, this is an injustice because there's folks here who have nothing to do with this. Like what you were talking about earlier. Like, why would it's not fair? How do you find balance? So there's like all these secrets and stuff that get revealed, and there's like protection and all kinds of storylines. And basically, what I'm saying is that like this is just one of countless storylines that I'm pulling out of my ass, if you will, that I'm having through dreams, half remembered, half misunderstood. But then I hear people like David Adair talking, and I'm like, whoa, that's kind of scary. Or even things like string theory. Um, it's very fascinating. So again, it's easy for me to slip into timelessness, but I have to tell you, like most of my stories are um, they're presented to me through dreams, and I don't really see um, because I'm primordial like that. I didn't have eyeballs in the traditional sense, and I took on forms like catfish, for example. So I lived in darker, murkier places, so I didn't need my eyes. So I see beyond seeing in the sense that I have like my clairvoyance is knowing, if you will. And um, there are some scary dreams though, like those two angels. That wasn't a light, fluffy story, you know. Um, that was like real. It's really too bad that my wall wasn't broken apart. I can't explain that. Um, I have interesting dreams about vampires, but they're not vampires in the traditional sense. And back in September, I was introduced to the vocabulary looshing. And I thought, oh my God, like I think that's what I'm dreaming of. But it turns out that those folks are me. So now in my dreams, I'm at this point where the bad guys, if you will, are me, and we're all coming together to find harmony because we're realizing we're fragmented. We need to come together. We need to find wholeness, oneness. There's so much to say. There's so much to say. Um, it's easy to go on. Um,
No, and
had
what
some
I
other thoughts.
find,
I can't remember.
yeah, and what I find interesting is I've gotten a lot of guidance in the form of riddles, and it's like it takes me a while to figure it out what it is. And it's like as I'm listening to your story, one of the things that was interesting is when you were like saying, "Yeah, being a catfish because I couldn't see." I remembered being guided one time that said, you're going to have to learn how to see without seeing. And I was like, what does that mean? And they're like, you're not, you can't see with your eyes, but you're still going to be able to see. And I'm like, my eyes are my seeing. And then it's like, I start to realize now, looking at it, going, oh, yeah, I can see in my mind. I can see on the astral. I can see these different ways. And I don't realize until hearing somebody else that it's like clicks in my head of going, I'm not using my eyes to see this part, but I'm still seeing. And so it's like, that's what they were referring to.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the world of duality, Michael. It's everything is everything and everything is nothing, and everything is nothing and everything is everything. Like this is what? Yeah. We must unsee to see. We must not listen to listen. Like I appreciate what you're saying, because that's what it is with my guides, and it's not intended to be riddles. It's just the subconscious mind is the 95% where everything is like already figured out. You and I, this is just the 5%. So we don't even know a drop in the bucket. Like if you think about an iceberg, right? 95% of the iceberg is underwater. That's the part of you I can't see, you can't even see unless you're in dreams. You know, you mentioned my cards earlier and the gemstones, and I was going to ask you if you had a question about a certain card or something, or if you wanted me to talk about how they came about, or the gemstones, if there was one in particular. I don't know. I got them here.
Um, I would, but I think with time, we unfortunately we're over the hour, and I want to be respectful of everything you have going on, and I have commitments as well to attend to. So I
Right.
thank you, and I would love to have you back on, and we could, address and look into those on the next episode if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. There's so much content to talk about. Like this one episode in particular, we could have multiple shows just talking about multiple themes that came up, but just a quick shout out, GinaVirginiaCasella.com. I've got merchandise for sale. So there's hats, there's beach towels, and you can book services with me. There is my Facebook group, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective. We're a growing community. It's full of like-minded folks who are taking charge of their lives in a whole new way. And there's all kinds of free content available to you. You can listen to me reading about the Purple King. Honestly, every time I listen to that, I cry a little bit. Just it's all about loving my life, and how life loves me, because I didn't always feel that way. But GinaVirginiaCasella.com has all of the links. And if you still need a ticket to the Full Disclosure Now conference, you can find the link there and get a discount. So thank you so much again, Michael, for having me on your show today. Really enjoyed my time.
Yes, thank you, and I love how you said how we could have several episodes, because I was like, I like ending episodes by going like, I feel like we just hit the tip of the iceberg with all that we could share, and so I love how you and I are like somewhat in sync on everything, and so yes, and I look forward to hanging out in Florida next week at the conference, and if you all can come, the link was shared earlier, and I shared Gina's link as well, and it's in the bio description. So thank you to everyone for watching, and thank you to Gina for coming on and trusting me to be the host, and because I know it's a little wearisome when you go on new shows with people you don't know. So thank you for trusting me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for taking a leap of faith and having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I look forward to many more episodes.
Likewise.
All right. Well, safe travels, and thank you to everyone watching. And I know this is early, so thank you all so much for coming into the chat room and being here this early. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we will see you after the conference. Next week's show's our pre-recorded, so because I'm at conference, so live shows will return after. So don't miss those, and please like and subscribe so you can follow along with this and see Gina when she comes back on, and we will let you all know when that'll be. And so good night, safe, or good night. I'm used to it being nighttime. Have a have a great afternoon, everyone, and blessings to you, Gina. Safe travels, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday.
Sounds great. Have a great trip, Michael. Take care of everybody. See you
Thank
next
you. You
time.
too.
Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.